excuse me, what we're gonna be talking about in this video is simplifying square roots. So to start off, again, if you are unfamiliar with what square roots are, go to our algebra playlist and look at powers and exponents, and I think it should be a video on square roots. Square roots, for short little description, is when a number has an exponent of 2. So when you got 4 to the power of 2, that's 4 times 4, which is 16. 16 is the answer, and the answer is what we call the square. And so I'll draw a little, I'm gonna erase that. But yeah, so that's kind of what squaring is. Now, you can do the reverse of this right here as well and find the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is whatever two numbers that you multiply together that equal 16, and that's 4. So the square root of 16 is 4. It's not 4 times 4, it's just 4 by itself. That's basically, finding the square root is just the reverse of making the square. Right, and the number 16 is what we call a perfect square, meaning that whenever you find this square root right here, it's gonna be a number, it's gonna be a whole number, it's gonna be a natural number. It's not gonna have a decimal, and it's not gonna have like a fraction. If it was something like 4 1/3, that's not a perfect square. But because we're talking about 16, because we're finding the square root of 16 is 4 and it's simple. What we're gonna talk about today is basically what to do when the number is not like 16. Let's say it was something like the square root of 17. What's this gonna be? Now, we're not approximating this right now. We're actually trying to simplify this down if we can. So simplifying a square root. The first thing that really I want to emphasize is that you got to understand that all numbers, you can take the square root of any number. You can take the square root of 16. You can take the square root of 21. You can take the square root of 43. You can take the square root of a decimal. You can take the square root of let's say 25.62. Like you can take the square root of anything that you want to, but the square root of this decimal right here is gonna have a decimal at the end. It's not gonna be just like a perfect whole number. It's not gonna be between 1 and 9 or 11 through 20. It's not gonna be a whole number basically. Really just focus on the whole number thing. When you take the square roots of imperfect squares, it's always gonna be a decimal or a fraction attached to it. So that's the first thing that you really need to know. Now, so sometimes you'll have numbers where you can take the square, but it might be situations where you might just want to simplify it. Because again, not everything is going to be, nice and perfect and, clean like this 4 right here. So let's say we had something like the square root of 32. The square root of 32. This will not, the square root, it'll be something with like a little decimal. But we want to avoid using that decimal. So what's another way that we could kind of put, and this is another thing about algebra too. Let me make sure. So we could find this decimal. We could do that. But that's going to be really time consuming. And it might not even necessarily be what we are trying to get to. So we can, what's called manipulate it to where it's the same value, just represented differently. I went over this in the last video, but 4 squared, we can represent that. That's also 16, because 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. So depending on whatever problem that we're working on, we might want to just use the number 16, or we might want to use this exponent, 4 squared. Even though they both equal the same value, it's just depending on what's more convenient while we figuring out this problem doing this science experiment. So keep that in mind, because that's what we're about to do now. We could find this decimal. But ain't nobody got, what did the lady say? Oh, ain't nobody trying to do that. So what we're gonna do instead is this. We're gonna simplify this. And we're gonna simplify it by doing this. Excuse me, let me get it. So what we're gonna do, so we got 32. We have to find the biggest perfect square inside of 32. Perfect square meaning something that gives us a nice clean square root when we take it. So we're gonna do 16. So we're gonna break down this 32 into two numbers, 16 and 32. I'm gonna show you right here. 16 times 32. It's the same thing. Now these two things are equal because 16 times 2 is 32. So the square root of 16 times 2 is the same as this right here. So now that we kind of broke this 32 up, we got one perfect square and we got another non-perfect square, which is what we want. Because now we can take the square root of this perfect square pretty easily. We can, so let me write it up here. So we got the square root of 16 times 2. We got, again, this perfect square and this 2 that's not a perfect square. We can break this down. We are going to break this down just one more time. And it's really not, it's not even that we're going to break it down. It's more so we just going to take the square root of this 16 and leave the 2 underneath the radical sign. So the square root is, and again, I just want to do this just so y'all can keep up with what's going on. So this is the next step. I break it apart and we do the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. If you didn't know that already, this is going to give us the same answer. But again, we're just breaking it down to make it convenient for us. So we split this up again into two separate terms or factors. So now we got the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. Now what we're going to focus on next is the square root of 16. What's the square root of 16? Shit, we got that answer right here. The square root of 16 is a perfect square, which is great because that's going to make our lives a lot easier when we're doing this science experiment. Square root of 16 is just going to be 4. So this right here, this whole thing right here, the value that it equals is 4. So we're going to put that right there and then we're just going to multiply it times the square root of 2. What's the square root of 2? Folks still trying to figure that out. I don't know. But this is where we stop. We stop right here. And sometimes you might see it written like this. 4 times the square root of 2. So this is the answer to the square root of 32. 4 times the square root of 2. Let's do one more real quick example if I can find my eraser. Let's say we had something like square roots of, what's a good number? Let's do something like 50. What's the square root of 50? Take a little bit of time, you know what I'm saying? Think about it. Think about what we just did with this whole thing. We broke it down into a perfect square, the biggest one that we could find, and then we kind of went through some arithmetic from there. But take a little second and see if you can think through that. Excuse me. So we're gonna do the same steps that we did in the last video. So we're gonna break down this 50 into one perfect square times whatever else that we need. And let's see if we can do that. What's the biggest perfect square in 50? 1 times 50, 2 times 25. I think that might be the one. Might be 2 times 25. So we're gonna break this 50 down in like this. Square root of 25 times 2. And we're gonna break that down one more time to square root 25 times square root of 2. And now we got a perfect square that we can work with. We got the square root of 25, which is just 5. 5, and then what we got left is times square root of 2. We're not gonna waste time trying to figure out what that is because don't nobody know. And so this is gonna be our answer, 5 times the square root of 2.